Hey, my name's Enter, welcome back to the channel, and we've got a MAMAN BRIGITTE gameplay trailer that just dropped, which is really interesting. We're going to get to see how her abilities are going to work in-game. It's not a full reveal, per se, but we get to see a lot about how her kit's going to work, especially in combined with the post that we got yesterday explaining her kit and stuff like that. So, it's only 55 seconds, but we do get to see a lot, so I'll play it through once, fully, without my commentary, and then I'm going to go over it and do some analysis on, you know, how she's going to play and what she's going to feel like in-game. So, here we go.
Alright, alright. I think it's just about time to get this party started. Maman is here now. Bartender! Gone already? Your turn, madame.
I will crush you.
Ugh, I hate party poopers. Excuse me, darling. Better move those feet now. Wasn't my bearer supposed to bring the drinks?
Ta-da!
Ooh, starting to get a bit spicy in here. Now it's a party. Now let's get back to the partying, shall we?
So there you go, there's the trailer. Looks really cool in my opinion. She turned out great in terms of visual design. Looks absolutely brilliant. The hair does look good. It does look good, but as I mentioned in my video yesterday, high-res don't do amazing with hair. Granted, this is like better than it usually is, but I didn't expect it to look anywhere near as good as it did on like the concept art and stuff, but she looks really good in game for sure. But yeah, we got a ton of kit information here. So the first major thing I noticed was right here. We have, maybe we'll do some slow down action. So right here, let's mute it because it's going to sound terrible. But yeah, right here, this is clearly some kind of like double AoE ability. And then it ends in some kind of big final like throw of her flask at the ground, doing like presumably AoE damage, maybe even stunning. It looks like he's stunned there. I'm pretty sure it's like a stun animation. And then she finishes off with like some kind of cleave. I'm not sure if this final cleave is just like maybe the final hit of her auto attack chain or something, or whether that's part of the ability itself, but it does seem like she kind of drops that vial, stuns them Kali style, and then follows up with this attack. Whether that's part of the ability, I'm not sure. It could just be her auto attacks there, but if it is her auto attacks, that's definitely like final hit of her chain, if anything, because that's like a big spinning like swipe. Could even have AoE properties there if that is her hit chain. But the ability in general, this is obviously the fuel-like system ability that was mentioned in the post. It seems like it's going to have like this area around her and then also this cone in front of her, which is like a unique targeter in itself. And then it seems like that is going to be the ability where she kind of like breathes fire, I guess. And then this hit here, this final like thing is probably when she runs out of fuel. Because it did say she had some kind of fuel-like system with no regeneration and an effect when she runs out of fuel. I assume this is the effect when she runs out of fuel. And it looks like that stuns as well. So it will make sense for it to be you know, maybe a little bit harder to access if it's going to be a stun on an assassin. It's going to be very powerful. But yeah, that follow-up strike looks really cool as well. Don't know if that's auto-attack chain again, as I mentioned. Next up, we have this really cool sequence. There's a lot to break down here when she's fighting Morgan Le Fay and Surta comes in, so we'll play this through here. So yeah, here we go. This is the unique targeter that they were mentioning. They mentioned she was going to have a completely unique targeter. I assume that previous one we talked about with the circle and the cone doesn't count because it's just two targeters that have already been seen before. But this thing, where she fires out like this snake, going to be like a waving targeter. So that's completely new. And it looks like when it applies to enemies, they get this little skull on them, which I assume is some kind of damage over time. Again, she's said to be playing heavily around damage over times in her kit design. And so I highly imagine this is going to be like you apply some kind of damage over time to them. But it also seems to apply one of these nails. Or spikes, or whatever they are. You can see before she gets hit, there's none on her, and then that applies when she gets hit by that. So, I imagine that's probably part of her passive. They mentioned she's got a gameplay loop centered around activating her passive in rapid succession, with her passive being a major factor in damage output. So, what I would guess is that every time you hit an enemy with an ability, or with a specific ability, but probably with any ability, I would imagine, it's going to apply one of these nail spikes onto the god, and then I assume we do get to see a little bit later that she has even more of these on her. I assume after a certain amount of time, those expire and then like puncture the god and it does burst damage. That would be what I assume is how it's going to work. It could also just be like slowly doing a dot to them over time, but Based on the fact that this skull is probably doing a dot to her, I imagine these probably just like after a certain amount of time or a certain amount of stacks, they expire and do big burst damage. But yeah, really cool new targeter for that ability. Really cool VFX on the Morgan there. And then Surta comes running in. And we get another really cool sequence pretty much right here. So yeah, here it is. The dash. So they said she was going to get a unique dash, and it looks like this is what we're going for. It was a unique dash with a take on a popular dash, and there you see. It's a take on Nox's dash, but you dash into enemies by the looks of it. The duration also seems way less. It seems like you can only stay inside an enemy for like 1 or 2 seconds, whereas Nox can stay inside an ally for like 5 or something like that, 4 or 5 seconds. But yeah, this dash animation looks absolutely sick. She like charges forward, like dagger prepared, and then enters the enemy. Seems like it also applies these spikes over time as long as you stay in the enemy. 3 were done there, so I assume the max is 3 because he stayed in for max duration here. And then when you pop out, I'm not sure if those spikes go when she pops out or not, is the thing. It looks like they do, you know. It looks like they do. So I imagine maybe those like expire after the dash. It could be that only her dash does that, or it could be that they were just ready to expire or something like that. But yeah, it looks like her abilities will apply these spikes, and also when she's dashed into an enemy, it seems like it applies 1 on hit, and then up to 2 more based on how long you stay in them. So I imagine probably like she can stay in them for 2 seconds and it applies 1 spike per second. So 3 in total on the initial hit, and then 1 second, 2 second, you get 3 of these spikes on them. And then I assume those expire and do burst damage. They do kind of like charge up here, and they look like they're about ready to like puncture in, as you can see there, and then you dash out. And do damage on the way back out, it seems. It looked like she killed that Surta on the way out of that dash, but this looks sick, dude. An aggressive take on Nox Dash is really cool. I always thought Nox Dash was one of the coolest movement abilities in the game. And I think it'll be even more interesting when you can dash into an enemy, to be honest. In a hectic team fight, like being able to just do that and completely immune anything that's coming your way. But you have to use your dash aggressively to do that. Granted, you get a little bit more movement when you leave them, but you could be putting yourself out of position with that. But that's the risk you take, you know, on an assassin. If you're diving into the backline, you got to commit a little bit. And finally, here we have her ultimate, and this looks really cool. We don't seem to get a whole lot on what it's actually going to do, but it looks really sick in terms of animation. So basically, Baron's chilling with her, of course. But yeah, here we go. She creates like this giant orb. It grows massively in size. She leaps up into the air and just like yeets that shit, like anime style, onto the ground. And I assume, you know, big damage. Maybe could even be like burst damage and applies some tick damage over time. You can see it killed them there, but obviously that was just for setup for the trailer and stuff. But the VFX, amazing on this character, man. I love the greens. Like, all of her abilities have this, like, really cool hue of, like, almost poisonous green. Looks really sick. And she's also got her rune sigil on that orb as well. Yeah, we don't really get too much on what it does, other than I assume that does big damage. They also mentioned in the post that she has an ability that has different potential sizes based on gameplay conditions. I assume that is the ultimate. We have seen other ones as well. You know, maybe like the circle and the cone could technically be different sizes. You know, maybe if you only get the circle in certain conditions and the cone gets added, that's technically a different size. But I would imagine big giant AoE circle ultimate is probably the ability that changes size based on gameplay conditions. They did say she excels at targeting low health enemies, so it's possible that if there's multiple low health enemies around her, or based on, you know, some other factor to do with that the ultimate could grow or shrink in size. But yeah, the animation looks really sick on that. Very excited to see what else this does. I assume it's not just big burst damage. It probably has some extra effect, you know, a CC or a damage over time afterwards, or like maybe it activates all of her passive spikes that are on the enemy. That could be really cool as well. But yeah, we've seen quite a lot here. We'll be waiting for patch notes, obviously, to see full, like, how her kit is going to work and how it flows and numbers and everything like that. We don't have any numbers, obviously, but she looks really awesome, in my opinion. Clearly, this is her passive, these nails, they get applied to people. It seems like they apply on every ability hit, or at least on multiple ability hits, because this snake thing applies one, as you can see there. And also her dash applies one on hit, and then also one every time, like, it ticks when they're inside, as you can see there. Another one appears, and then another one appears. And, oh wait, no, a fourth one actually does appear. So yeah, you can get up to 4. I didn't even notice this one. It was kind of like facing away from the camera. But yeah, you can get up to 4 spikes on them by waiting inside them. And then, I don't know if they trigger when you leave. It seems like maybe they do, because when she left, the Morgan dies. I'm pretty sure the Morgan dies there. Let me see if I can get a freeze frame. Actually, it's way too hard to tell, but it looks like maybe the Morgan dies there. The Morgan dies there. So maybe when you leave the enemy, it automatically triggers the spikes, and, you know, maybe the spikes just trigger after a certain amount of time normally, but you can dash into them and blow up all the spikes on command and get big burst damage or something like that. Could even be a bit of a, like, risk versus reward with the spikes. You know, maybe while they're applied to enemies, they're doing constant damage over time, but if you can dash into them and explode them, they'll do, like, maybe a little bit less total damage, but as a big burst. I'm pretty sure there's a god that has a similar mechanic to that, but it's escaping me at the moment, where you can sacrifice your tick damage to gain a big amount of burst damage. And yeah, then of course we also had this ability that we talked about at the start, which is a very interesting targeter. She has some kind of circle around her, and then also breathes fire in a cone. And then seemingly, I assume that's when she runs out of fuel. She throws, you know, maybe that is the fuel, maybe because she's blowing fire breath over her rum. You know, makes sense. Alcohol is flammable. And then when she runs out of it, she throws it at the ground, and it does, like, big AoE fire burst damage. It does seem like the Suku is already stunned, so it might be like a Bacchus burp style thing, where at the end of this cone channel, the enemy gets stunned. Because he's clearly running towards her there. Actually, no, I was wrong. When I was talking about this earlier, I was thinking maybe it's stunned before, but you can see here that he's still running towards her. Still running towards her. There, as soon as she throws it at the ground, there was a little bit of lag, but that's probably just like animation jank. And he gets stunned as soon as you throw that, so presumably that stun is going to be a little bit conditional on when you run out of fuel. They did mention she has a fuel system, so yeah, you're not going to be able to get that all the time, I would imagine, when you're using this ability. But yeah, there you go. Also stuns and does big AoE damage. Maybe this is a follow-up hit, maybe this is just her auto attacks. We don't really know, but yeah, some really cool stuff about MAMAN Brigitte. Let me know down below how you're feeling about her. Personally, this is a god release that I'm probably the most excited for of the entire year. In fact, definitely most excited of the entire year. But probably the most excited in, like, the last couple of years, I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna be a really cool one, both in terms of kit design, being a magical assassin, and she seems to have some really interesting, like, targeters and unique gameplay mechanics, but also just visually and, like, character-wise, she looks awesome. The music in this video, I know I only played it with audio at the start, but the music in this video is great as well. So yeah, let me know what you think of her down below, and I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.